Donald Trump's administration hailed warming relations with Beijing as details of a new trade deal between China and the United States were announced on Friday. The new 10-point agreement was described as herculean by Mr. Trump's Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross, who said, U.S.-China relationships are now hitting a new high, especially in trade. The deal is part of a 100-day plan agreed by Mr. Trump and Xi Jinping, the Chinese president, to reset the trade relationship between the world's two biggest economies. It follows a meeting between the two leaders at Mr. Trump's Florida resort last month. Mr. Trump made America's massive trade deficits a major issue in his campaign and during the early days of his administration. He particularly targeted China on the issue, accusing Beijing of causing the loss of millions of factory jobs as he pledged to take a tougher stance in trade negotiations. Mr. Trump has also linked economic issues with North Korea, in the hope that in confronting China on trade he could force Beijing to put more pressure on its neighbor to give up its weapons program. But hopes that the agreement would provide a breakthrough for more deals between Beijing and Washington were quashed by comments from Zhu Guanyao, China's Vice Minister of Finance, who said, "We cannot politicize economic issues." He added, on the connection between the North Korean nuclear issue and our economic 100 days plan negotiations, "I can tell you frankly that our economy team focused all their efforts on economic issues." The agreement covers a number of long-standing barriers in areas ranging from agriculture to energy to the operation of American financial firms in China. China will open its borders to U.S. beef after the meat was banned in 2003, while cooked Chinese poultry is set to enter the American market. Companies from the U.S. would also be able to ship liquefied natural gas to China. Some of the points had previously been agreed between China and the U.S., and some observers believe it remains to be seen whether concessions that were made would be upheld. But Shi Yinhong, a State Council advisor and director of the Center for American Studies at Renmin University in Beijing, said the deal was an indication of improved relations between the two countries. He also said that China had made major concessions by allowing the U.S. to import gas and beef into the country. Trump has said a lot during the election, he told The Telegraph. So, this deal will help prevent Trump from further impairing economic and trade relations between the two countries. I don't think it is a bad thing for China, because we can absorb such imports, and Trump might not be that harsh when delivering punitive measures on economic and trade issues. Beijing was previously cautious towards Mr. Trump after he targeted China during his election campaign, pledging to label the country a currency manipulator and impose trade tariffs. But tensions have eased in recent months, with Mr. Trump making glowing remarks about Mr. Xi following an apparently warm meeting at his Mar-a-Lago club. America's trade deficit in goods and services with China totaled $310 billion, £240 billion, last year, by far the largest imbalance with any country. The deficit with China represented about 60% of the country's total deficit last year of $560 billion. The Trump administration has reached new deals with China to ease market access for a variety of industries, including beef and financial services, as the White House makes progress on trying to soften economic barriers between the two sides. The 10-part agreement, announced by Secretary of Commerce Wilbur Ross, comes as part of an ongoing negotiation between the two countries following a meeting between President Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping last month. "We have some very big news," Ross told reporters Thursday. U.S.-China relationships are now hitting a new high, especially in trade. "We're announcing, jointly with the Chinese, the initial results of the 100-day action plan of the U.S.-China Comprehensive Economic Dialogue. But experts were less impressed. China has made a few modest concessions that cost it very little, in areas strategically picked to maximize the political benefit to Trump," said Arthur Kroeber, managing director of Garvkel Dragonomics, an economic research firm in Beijing. But the substantive impact on U.S.-China trade and investment flows is pretty minimal. Still, In a week of chaotic news from the Trump administration, White House officials pitched the agreement as a major breakthrough. The new arrangements include an agreement from China to allow imports of U.S. beef, on certain conditions, by July 16. The United States has pressured China for years to allow beef imports, but the process has been constantly delayed. It's at least a $2.5 billion market that's being opened up for U.S. beef, Ross said. The beef industry praised the agreement. It's impossible to overstate how beneficial this will be for America's cattle producers, and the Trump administration deserves a lot of credit for getting this achieved, National Cattlemen's Beef Association President Craig Uden said. Similarly, Washington has agreed to advance a new rule that would allow China to export cooked poultry to the United States. The impact of this change on the U.S. poultry industry is uncertain, but Ross said it would not be severe. And there were numerous other parts of the preliminary agreement. This included language that appears to pave the way for U.S. firms to export liquid natural gas to China, the expediting of Chinese safety reviews for U.S. biotechnology applications, and cooperation between Chinese and U.S. regulators over financial transactions. Other parts of the arrangement would direct China to issue bond underwriting and settlement licenses to 2 qualified U.S. financial institutions by July 17, a date that is significant because it comes 100 days after Trump and Xi met in Florida. And the United States has agreed to allow Chinese entrepreneurs to a Washington summit in June. Trump spent months on the campaign trail berating China for its trade practices, but he has softened his approach since winning office. He has initiated reviews of China's support of its steel and aluminum industries and its impact on U.S. trade, but the outcome of those reviews is unclear. He has shown a willingness to back away from trade-related threats after consulting with aides and foreign leaders, and he has recently heaped praise on Xi and what he perceives as China's willingness to negotiate. Christopher Balding, an associate professor at the HSBC Business School in Shenzhen in China, said Trump had created leverage with his undiplomatic statements on the campaign trail. However, the importance of this deal shouldn't be overstated, he added. These are largely long-standing issues that China was either legally obligated to address or had every reason in its own incentives to address. Nevertheless, Balding said the agreement could provide the basis for further cooperation and the market-opening agreements for American firms in China. At a news conference in Beijing, China's Vice Commerce Minister Yu Jianhui said the trade deficit between the two countries had been overestimated and was not a priority during this round of talks. But he added China was open-minded about discussing it in further rounds, calling the U.S. government's attitude positive and pragmatic. The wisdom and ability of the two countries to control differences and properly handle bilateral relations is beyond the imagination of many people, Yu said. In Washington, Ross said this announcement covered 10 items, but was a step in the right direction. As you can appreciate, this addresses 10 items, Ross said of the initial agreements. There are probably 500 items that you could potentially discuss, maybe more than 500. Ross said they would continue working and then see if we can reach agreement on other matters. Beijing will open its borders to U.S. beef, while cooked Chinese poultry is closer to landing on American supermarket shelves under a U.S.-China trade agreement. Trump administration officials hailed the deal as a significant advance toward boosting U.S. exports and closing America's trade gap with the world's second-largest economy. U.S. trade experts offered a more muted assessment, calling the agreement a modest fulfillment of past assurances made by China. Among other things, the deal enables U.S. companies to export liquefied natural gas to China. It will also lower long-standing barriers that have affected matters ranging from agriculture to the operation of American financial firms in China. Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross hailed the agreement, coming on the heels of President Donald Trump's April meeting with President Xi Jinping, as a Herculean accomplishment. This is more than has been done in the whole history of U.S.-China relations on trade, Ross told reporters Thursday evening at the White House. In Beijing, Vice Finance Minister Zhu Guangyao told reporters the early results of the agreement showed that economic collaboration between the two sides couldn't be closer. But trade experts questioned the magnitude of the deal.